right now we have joining us New York House candidate Brad Lander, who is, as we said, trying to unseat the Democratic Congressman Dan Goldman tonight. And thank you, sir, for being here. Obviously a key distinction in your race. As the votes are still coming in, and we're watching them closely, as you obviously are, you're backed by Mayor Mamdani. Dan Goldman is backed by the Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries here in Washington. What do you think the results tonight will tell us about whose endorsement matters more?
Look, I think the votes tonight are going to tell us what voters want to see in the Democratic Party, and I think they want leaders who are going to fight, not just Donald Trump, but the billionaires who are rigging the economy against us, and, that's what I think tonight's election is about.
Well, I asked because Hakeem Jeffries was asked today, what significance he's applying to these races, and he said, and I'm quoting him, "A handful of primaries that go in one direction or the other in a given state or two aren't going to reshape who we are as House Democrats." Do you agree with that sentiment, or do you think it should reshape depending on the results?
I mean, look, I think progressives have been winning across the country. Ana Lilia Mejia, Chris Rabb, Adam Hamawi, Daniel Biss. And those are folks who say, we want to see a Democratic Party that's fighting harder. We shouldn't be taking corporate PAC money from Wall Street and crypto and AI and APAC. We've got to fight harder for working families and have people see us fighting for them. And we have to reset the U.S. relationship with Israel.
And do you believe Democratic leadership is in line with what you just laid out there?
Well, I mean, that's why we have primaries. I think the primaries are showing that that's how Democratic voters feel. And as we get ready to then unify and go win the majority in the fall, it'll be important to take those lessons into real account.
Do you think you're going to win tonight?
I mean, I just saw the early voting numbers go up on the air with you. Obviously, I'm very happy to see those early, and I loved being out on the street today. I mean, I love every election day, but the spirit that's been moving in New York City since the Knicks win has been pretty incredible. So look, I think voters are hungry for change. That's why I ran in this race. The feeling, it felt good out on the streets today, and I'm optimistic about tonight's results.
If you win tonight and Democrats do take back the majority, would you vote for Hakeem Jeffries as House Speaker?
Yes, I'm eager to help elect Hakeem Jeffries as House Speaker and also to make sure that our leadership is accountable to the party, just like voters hold us accountable.
How would you plan to do that?
I mean, that's what we're doing right now. Yeah, I'm running a primary against a corporate incumbent Democrat to say voters want change on a range of issues, on corporate money, on fighting on housing and healthcare, and yes, on not sending any more money for Netanyahu's wars.
I want to ask you about Israel, but on just what we're learning tonight about your party. When he was asked about the Democratic primaries in New York tonight, including yours, Senator John Fetterman, obviously a Democrat from Pennsylvania, said, quote, "The dirtbag left is surging." What's your response to that?
I mean, look, I'm not going to respond to, slurs, I guess. I don't know what you would call it. When I launched this race, I said I didn't think what was at stake was progressives versus moderates. There are plenty of moderate districts across the country, and I've knocked doors for moderate Democrats, and I'll do it again as we head for November. The line is between fighters and folders. And it's possible to be a progressive or a frontline Democrat and say, we have got to be the party that fights harder for working families and actually delivers for them. And on those things, on universal child care, on making housing more affordable for people, on winning back the health care subsidies that Republicans cut, there's broad agreement across the party. The question is, how do we get out there and show people we're fighting for it?
So when Fetterman calls your wing of the party the dirtbag left, I mean, you're saying he's wrong.
I mean, I'm not sure Fetterman is in our party anymore, to be honest. Democrats are having primaries to determine what kind of candidates we want to put on the field. And there'll be a diverse array of candidates because they reflect and represent a diverse array of districts. Primaries are a time to have those fights out. And then as we head toward the fall, it's a time of unity. I will try to be a force of unity. I hope Senator Fetterman will stop attacking other Democrats and decide to rejoin the fold. But if he wants to leave the party, we've got a lot of great fighters who can show up and fight for working families.
You mentioned Israel, which has obviously been a huge flashpoint in this race with you and Dan Goldman. And when he was on the show in May, I asked him how he would describe the difference in the two of you on your views on Israel. And essentially he argued, quote, "We're both Zionists. We both support Israel. We both support a two-state solution. We're both supported by J Street." And then he was arguing that what people are talking about on the streets of New York were not, Israel 6,000 miles away, but what was happening at the White House. How would you articulate your difference with Dan Goldman?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Dan Goldman knows that he's out of step with his district on this issue. He voted for every single standalone aid package to Israel to fund all the 2,000-pound bombs that, destroyed all of the schools and hospitals in Gaza. I've made clear I'll sign on to the Block the Bombs Act and the Ceasefire Compliance Act, neither of which he has, and I won't vote for any more money for Israel while it's violating Palestinian human rights and international law. That's a pretty stark difference, and it's one that Democratic voters are really clear about.
Do you believe what happened to him in the coffee shop where he was with his daughter, and they came out and posted this Brooklyn coffee shop after that he was banned, and they were refunding him because of the money, because they didn't want to take AIPAC money? Do you believe that was a wrong way for that coffee shop to express their views?
I do. I thought Representative Goldman's response was gracious, explaining that he had come in because his daughter needed to use the bathroom, and he bought a coffee, in order to, say thank you and to tip her. I was glad they took the post down. There are a lot of ways that voters can express their passionate disagreements with their representatives. I think there are a lot of voters in the district who don't want to be complicit in genocide, but we don't need to bring that fight into our coffee shops and the small businesses of our neighborhoods. We don't want to compromise on anyone's humanity, not in Israel and Palestine, and not in Brooklyn or any of the 5 boroughs.
Yeah. Bradlander, we came on the air just a couple of minutes ago as the numbers were still coming in your race. I'm going to do something a little unusual here, so I want you to bear with me. Not many candidates are on CNN when they hear this music. But we do have breaking news, and we can now project that Bradlander will defeat the incumbent Congressman Dan Goldman in the Democratic primary for New York's 10th congressional district. And sir, obviously, since we have you here live on air as we are making this call, what is your first reaction to this?
Well, thank you. First of all, obviously, I'm thrilled. I did not expect to be on air when the race was called. Look, I love Election Day. I like that voters get to go out and cast their ballots and say, here's who we want to represent us. These are the fights that matter to us. And all I can say is I promise to go out every single day and fight for my constituents and the values that they have, because we need a country that stands up for working people. It doesn't make it so hard to live here. I'll be fighting for a city everyone can afford and where everyone is welcome. And I'm really honored to be on your show tonight.
Depending on how the rest of these races go tonight, everyone's going to be looking for through lines and what this means for the Democratic Party come November. We know at least one candidate who is endorsed by Mayor Mamdani and not endorsed, obviously, by the minority leader here in Washington, Hakeem Jeffries, has won, which is you. What do you think it says about the Democratic Party tonight?
Look, I think it says people want fighters. They want people who reject corporate PAC money from private equity, Wall Street, and crypto and AIPAC. It wants people who center that real felt needs of working families and go out and fight and deliver for them like I've been doing for 30 years, protecting tenants and building affordable housing. And I do think it says Democratic voters want to reset the U.S. relationship with Israel. They don't want a foreign policy that compromises on anyone's humanity.
Do you think that's become a litmus test in your party to a degree?
Well, I don't know that it's a litmus test. There's still a majority of Democratic members of Congress who take money from AIPAC, and a majority of Democrats, in the House at least, have continued to vote for military aid. I think it says Democratic voters want to see that change.
Do you agree with how Mayor Mamdani described AIPAC when he was out on the campaign trail?
Look, voters have a lot of concerns with AIPAC and the way, but it's, that's true of other super PACs as well that spend money in dark ways, that don't even talk clearly about the issues that they're focused on. It was an important part of my campaign. At the same time, I'm a proud Jewish New Yorker. Anti-Semitism is surging. It is important for us to be clear that the Democratic Party is not going to compromise on anyone's human rights, not Palestinians in Gaza, and not Jews in New York City or the United States of America. That's not two separate jobs. That's the same job.
Brad Lander, thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for being with us as CNN projected your race. That was not planned, but you know what? News happens as it happens.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. Great to be with you. Happy Election Day.
Yeah, we look forward to talking to you again soon. My top political sources are here joining me tonight, including Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California, Republican strategist Shermichael Singleton, and former Obama administration official Van Jones. And Van, I just want to start with you in terms of what you're watching tonight, now that we know that Brad Lander is projected to defeat the incumbent in this race, two-term Congressman Dan Goldman, who obviously everyone will remember from leading Trump's impeachment when he was working and then obviously becoming a congressman. What are you making of this tonight?
The revolution is being televised. That's what I make of it. The Mamdani phenomenon is not a one-guy thing. The Democratic Socialists are an insurgency in this party. We'll see what happens in New York 13. But I think people who thought this was going to be, a kind of a cute guy off to the side, there's a huge infrastructure here. There's a movement here. There's passion here. And people who don't like it are going to have to wake up and smell the coffee. This is a serious movement inside the Democratic Party. The left is on the march.
Congressman, obviously, you're the Democrat here at the table, the Democratic official with us. I mean, when you're looking at this, how are you watching this tonight?
I'm glad that Brad Lander won. I had done some support for him. And look, this is fundamentally about Gaza. Anyone who says that Mamdani was just about affordability doesn't understand that election. It was partly about Gaza. Young people saw on their phones for 2 years the genocide that took place. And for many people, it's a test of character. Are you going to deny that genocide, or are you going to say what took place and you're going to stand for human rights? That was the central difference in this race between Dan Goldman and Brad Lander. And Brad Lander won. And in my view, this is going to be a central divide heading into 2026 and 2028.
Yeah, look, I think this is the Tea Party moment for my friends on the left. And many in the establishment wing of my party, they dismissed many of the Tea Party elements. And obviously that spurred the rise of President Trump and him being elected twice. I think that's where this is going on the other side. And I agree with you, Congressman. I think in 2028, it will be a tale of two cities. You'll have your establishment, traditional Democrats, against someone who may be progressive, maybe even a democratic socialist, making their appeals to younger voters in particular, maybe even middle-aged Democratic voters who find themselves to be completely disgusted by a political system that they believe is no longer working for them. That said, as a conservative, I see this as a real contrast between an element of the Democratic Party that believes the United States should retract on the world stage and be weak and not support our allies. I see a iteration of the Democratic Party that does not believe in capitalism. They do not believe it works. They do believe that there's a significant percent of people in America who have earned too much, and that somehow it is the responsibility of the government to take from them and spread the wealth around to everyone else under the guise of making and improving the lot and life of the majority, those who are struggling. I would clearly view that a different way. It is a message and a contrast that I think conservatives will hopefully draw in November. We'll certainly draw it in 2028. Do you want a prosperous America, or do you want an America with government control that is expansive, with higher taxes, that dictates who can and cannot be successful? I'm willing to bet that most Americans will believe in the Republicans when drawing that contrast.
Well, we will see if that is actually the case. We obviously have a lot more races to watch tonight as we are reading the tea leaves here.